I grew up in the rural South, and then I went to law school on the East Coast, and then I have spent most of my adult life on the West Coast. So I've kind of triangulated the country, and what I'm pretty clear about is, there's a basic message around opportunity and justice and access that works everywhere. And I think that part of what I've been trying to do in my search is to try to find that common language that works, that lets us have a shared vision again. And I think we different parts of the country talk different, and sound different, but at the end of the day, what everybody wants is the same. People want clean air, clean water, good job, good education, and no violence in their community. That's all they want. And if we talk in those terms, work, wealth, and health, then I think we can connect the whole country back to the song.
And when did you begin to see the link between the social and economic justice and the environment? When did that?
Yeah. Well, most people in the Bay Area know I worked for a long time on criminal justice issues, police brutality, prisons, and I just burned out. I mean, that's tough work. And it was in trying to find some healing for myself that I then discovered, yoga and meditation and tofu and all the green stuff. And I tried to bring those two worlds together, and that's what I focused on for the past almost 10 years. But I remember I was driving back and forth from Oakland to Marin County. I was going to Marin County for, spirituality retreat. I remember saying, why do I have to leave Oakland to go to this retreat? Like, why can't we have beautiful green spaces and contemplative spaces and healthy air and healthy water? Why can't we have all that stuff in Oakland? And I said, these young people I'm working with need green jobs, not jails. And that was my big kind of epiphany. It's like 4 syllables. Green jobs, not jails. We don't have any throwaway resources. We don't have any throwaway kids either. It's all sacred. And then from there, I've just continued to try to follow the logical calling out of those 4 words. The people who don't want change will use whatever they find. They don't have any particular concern about some of the stuff we care about. This is what I think. The challenges that we're getting for this movement for hope and change, in some ways they're a death rattle. It's just the last century's nonsense trying somehow to find a footing in this beautiful new century that we've got, which is much more diverse, much more caring, much more ecologically conscious. And I just think we should just not overreact to any of that stuff. Let's be open and loving. Eventually we will wear them down with our capacity to love them and their country and their planet, because it's our country and our planet. I see myself as somebody who's seeking healing. And, when you're seeking healing for yourself, you sometimes can share what you're learning with other people. But I think my fundamental calling is to be a bridge builder. I used to be a brick thrower, metaphorically. But now I'm trying to use those bricks in a different way. And that's tough work. And bridges are easy to knock down. And but you have to keep working to put them back together again. And that's my fundamental role, I think. I'm very confident that people, I have the benefit, actually know rich people. And I know that they're human beings. And that they have real pain and real problems. And I know poor people. And I know they're real human beings with real pain and real problems and real promise. And when some days I'm inside a prison working with people. Sometimes some days I'm in a mansion. Sometimes it's the same day. Then it gives you that ability to say, listen, we are one people, we're one country, let's work together. And it's an authentic stand that I actually live out in my own life. I really think that people are in some ways unfair to the president on this point. He's been in office for 14 months. This guy volunteered to be the captain of the Titanic after it hit the iceberg, okay, and the ship is still floating. Just that is a miracle. We can now argue, should it go faster, slower, more to the left, more to the right. The fact that we still have a functioning economy, which was not guaranteed when we first went in the White House, we weren't sure if we were going to have an economy by the end of the year. So when those are your starting points, will you even have will you be in a permanent world depression, right? And 14 months later, people are angry because it took a few months too long for a health care bill. I don't know, I feel like sometimes we move the goalpost on this president a little bit too much. Number one. Number two, we went from, in 2008, acting like, yes, we can, and then in 2009, it was, yes, he can. And the movement disappeared. The president didn't disappear. He kept doing his job, but the movement disappeared for a year. And I think we can learn from that. Ask yourself, how hard did you work in 2008 to elect the president? And then how hard did you work in 2009 to support it? And there's a world of difference for most people. And so I say, if you're frustrated with change, that frustration should be with us, should be with the people. And that that's something we can do something about. we can turn the dial up on ourselves very easily. And I think we're just getting started. This is the beginning of a 20-year process. This movement for hope and change is going to transform this country. We will have good days and bad days. We'll have good years and bad years. But something has now begun that cannot be turned back. And as long as we don't get distracted, pulled into the food fight with our opponents, or go with a cheap cynicism and depression ourselves, we will be able to speed up this transformation and make it happen. You know what? It's not important for people to consider going to electoral politics. It's important for people to consider going into their own hearts and figuring out what gives them joy, and then using that joy to make change wherever they feel called to do it. Some people will just do great in elected office, and if you try to make them be grassroots organizers or send them to Burning Man, forget it. It's not going to work. Some people are going to be great at Burning Man, creating all kinds of new visions of the future. If you tried to make them go to DC, they wouldn't even get in the building because their piercings would set off the metal detector. So, and all that's needed, So, when you're talking about a civilizational shift, this isn't just a political movement or an economic movement or a cultural movement or a spiritual movement. It's all that. It's a civilizational shift back towards some kind of wisdom. And you need everybody. You need everybody doing what they love to do as a part of the movement. Well, first of all, these people that we call young people are pretty old. If you look at the average age of the sit-in students in the 60s or the freedom riders, they were what, 17, 18, you know what I mean? So already the generation Obama, you're talking about most of these people, folks who work on the campaign, they're in their early 20s already. So Dr. King was 25 in Montgomery. So young people, I'm not talking to people in third grade. I'm talking to people who historically are the folks who have been able to turn their societies around. If you look, that is the age group. The quote-unquote founding fathers were mostly in their 30s. So you're talking about an age group that traditionally is able to move the country. They're just old enough to be able to ask tough questions and act independently, but they're young enough to believe that change is possible. I mean, some are asking questions that are too tough, because they're these blogger ones, but you have to have confidence in this generation. This is not Generation X. This is not my generation. This is not a generation of slackers. The millennials, they're more service oriented than any generation prior. They're more connected through technology. They're more politically aware than any generation, partly because of President Obama and frankly Hillary Clinton, bringing their attention into politics. And they're bigger than the baby boomers. So if a generation is going to be able to put this country on its shoulders and carry it in a new direction, we got the generation that we needed, and they're the millennials. The possibility of a green economy is the big hope in the new century. Because in the new century, you only have two problems: radical social inequality and radical environmental destruction. You only have two problems. Now, there are two problems on a little green soap bubble in space called Earth, with 10 billion people on it possibly by the end of the century, so they're tough problems to solve. But you only got two problems. And the green economy gives you an answer for both. It gives you a way to create work so that you can begin to narrow some of that social inequality, and also, however, begin to restore the carrying capacity of the Earth, have us working more like honeybees in consort with other species rather than locusts against all the other species. So the green economy is a great hope locally, nationally, and globally. Yeah. First of all, I think we spend too much time where the conservative pundits who say that are talking to a very small part of the country. So most people don't know what a green job is today. and they don't think it for black people or white people. They don't know what it is. So it's a very within the political class, some of these things come up, but fundamentally, green jobs are good for everybody, red states, blue states, all races, both parties. Um, in the agricultural heartland, people could be growing energy crops, not corn-based, but algae and others. They could be deploying wind turbines. They could be sequestering carbon in the soil with advanced agricultural techniques and getting paid for that. In agricultural America, mostly red state America, if we had smart, sane climate policy, we could get 3 paychecks to poor folks in rural areas right now based on deploying wind turbines, 1 paycheck, $10,000 per each. If you just stick it on your land, you get 10,000 bucks per each. Growing energy crops, 2nd paycheck. Sequestering carbon in the soil, 3rd paycheck. You get 3 paychecks to poor folks in rural America, red states America. Those are all green jobs. In the industrial heartland, you can put people back to work manufacturing the wind turbines, the solar panels, smart batteries that we need. That's for low-income people of all colors. Native Americans who have an abundance of wind and solar energy on their reservations, they can also become energy producers and put food on the table. This is an agenda that can put the whole country back to work. Red states, blue states, black, white, green, purple, otherwise, Smurf. So we have to carry that message forward. But let's be clear. The first piece of green jobs legislation ever passed by Congress and signed into law was passed by Congress in 2007, signed into law by George W. Bush, by the way, bipartisan. That's only 3 years ago. So if there's confusion about what a green job is and who's supposed to be for, that's on us to solve. Of course, people will deliberately misinterpret it, but we're talking about a movement that's only been a federally recognized movement for 3 years. And so, where was the civil rights movement 3 years into its journey? Or mainstream environmentalism 3 years into its journey? So, I have great confidence that as more people get jobs, as more people become entrepreneurs in this space and give jobs, that this will become increasingly common sense, common ground for both parties. That's inevitable. You don't have to worry about that. Our coal miners are our heroes, and they are not being treated with proper respect by the coal industry, and that's a fight we have to fight. But I wouldn't reduce the entire politics of all 50 states to what's going on in West Virginia. That is a particularly tough nut to crack. And at the same time, there are people who are fighting right now in West Virginia to say, stop blowing up my grandmother's mountains, to saying, stop poisoning my children's water. And we need to allow ourselves with those struggles and continue to move forward the cause of justice. I wish that as we continue to develop our democracy, that we would find more ways for more kinds of voices to be heard. I am fully supportive of third parties. I wish we could make it easier for them to make the difference that they want to make. I love in New York where they have the Working Families Party that can cross endorse with Democrats or with Republicans, but can also be independent. I think if we had that kind of system here in California, where parties could cooperate when they wanted to, run against each other when they wanted to, it would give us, I think, a richer set of ideas and give more meaning to the idea of the democratic process. So that can be a part of the agenda going forward. I think if we're gonna, in other words, if we're gonna reboot California politically, I would say let's do those things that will let third parties be stronger in our state. The kinds of ecological and economic dislocations that we're going to be facing will require that we either turn to each other or on each other, right? And if we turn on each other, it's over. So the politics of solidarity are just the politics of survival. You don't have to be some great visionary in this century to know that we need each other, period.